This is my final year project's prototype for CyberX Race, which is a pod racing sci-fi game. So if we're just this is the current title screen. So if we were to press play, we have a countdown, the lap timer, speed in miles per hour, and the lap timers. So once we go through the time, the check line, the timer will start and just keep counting up and down. So if we were to just drag the player like this, so let me back up a tiny bit. Yeah, so if we, let's say, get to like 15 seconds and go through it, our personal best time will be updated. And again, if we were to do the same, oh, okay, let me just, there we go. Yeah, so if we were to go through it again, it doesn't update because we didn't beat our personal time. However, if we just turn around essentially and go through the collider again, we get 5 seconds, our lap will completed, and the lap timer itself will stay on whatever the last one was. We also have, so this is our movement firstly. Does get stuck on the sides, which will be changed for the final build obviously. But, oh, and after 5 seconds, the lap will restart and the lap timer will also restart. I forgot to mention that one. So we also have a boosting system, which will be turning blue when the player is boosting and will be yellow when just pressing W. So if I was to press W every once a couple of seconds, it will give like a little burst. If held, it will give a long burst. So yeah, that's enough of the gameplay. So in our build, we have a couple of things here. We have the managers, which at the moment is only the personal best and the lap timer manager. From here you can set the lap times, so maximum amount of laps you would like the player to complete. Yep, and then we have also the player, which has 2 scripts with a bunch of things essentially to allow it to move. In this we also use, if I go to play, so I can see, we can actually see it. So here we are using raycast to keep the player above the floor. So there's essentially 4, which is the back, front, right and left raycasts, and they will keep the player at a certain distance using a force to keep it up and then a force to keep it down, so it hovers essentially. And for the camera we are using the Cinemachine as it's modular. It's basically very easy to use. So now if you head to our code, okay, so this is our personal best script, which works together with the lap time manager to manage the lap times, the personal best times, and the lap counter. So firstly we start off by beginning the race. So once the player presses play, it will start a 5-second cooldown, which will give a UI feedback. Once those are over, it will, once the player has essentially entered the checkout line, it will start counting down, which is in the start race function. Start race method. So yeah, it will set the time to 0. It will update the UI and also begin the middle timer. Once that happens, we then go to the complete lap method. So when the player enters the collider, which can be seen here, it uses a trigger. Once it goes through, it will essentially add a lap if it's on 0. So let's say it's the first time that the player goes through. It will, let me put this here, yeah, there we go. So if the player goes through the timer, it will add a lap, reset the time, and add the personal best time here. Yes. And then once it goes through that, it will add a lap timer, like I said. However, when, let's say, the player has gone through the lap timer 3 times, or whatever the laps are set to, it will stop the counter, add this, and then show the best time here, which is in the end race section. And it will also give a debug, which will just tell you that the race has been reset and ready for a new attempt. So once once like 5 to 10 seconds have passed, it will reset the lap timer, and then once you again pass the checkered line, it will begin counting down again, counting up, as you can see here. So that is that for the personal best. When we head to the lap time manager, we have, so the lap time manager basically will, once a personal best has been recorded, it will then send it to a JSON file and update the UI. So it will save it to a JSON file which can be viewed when reopening the game. So if, for example, we were to just restart the game, which does take a few seconds, unfortunately. Yep, so the timer is going to be here. Again, count everything works, and the time will be that best time. So that is the lap time manager. Now, let me pause this. Okay, so now we go to our player controller, which is the pod racer controller. So here we have a bunch of different variables. So we have from movement to acceleration to hover to gravity to tilting and physics layer masks, and obviously the basic rigid body and everything. So in the hovering mechanism, which is the main, which I personally believe is the main like thing that allows us to move around. So how it works is it will throw out 4 raycasts onto the floor, which can be only viewed obviously once we press play, and it will give one in the front, the back, and the 2 sides of the wings. So if we press play and then go to the player, you can see them here, the red lines. So yeah, like I said, front, back, left, and right. So for the hovering mechanism, it uses a couple of variables, which are, if I can just find them 1 second. So yeah, it will use the proportional gain to adjust the player based on height errors, which could be, let's say the player goes through like an angle or goes up or down, so that it doesn't smack the floor or fly weirdly. That's what that's for. Then we also have the integral grain and the dampening grain. So the dampening will help it essentially not bounce too much, while the integral grain will, like I said, so you don't smack the floor, it will slowly smooth out any errors. And then we also have a custom gravity system, which is here. So essentially, if they're using it uses a layer mask, which we have set in Unity to ground. So any of the roads, as long as it's not on the road, it should be completely fine. It'll carry on floating and everything. However, let me actually do a little demonstration of this. So if we were to add a plane, and then just move it up here, make it huge, and then get the player and smack it on top of that, you'll see it doesn't allow it to hover at all. You can't move. You can move, it's just very dodgy, essentially. So let me actually delete that for a second. While on the here, once it detects it, it will slowly hover up and then carry on moving. Then we also have the moving, which is simply uses the Unity's vertical axis to determine either controller or the W key to see if it's going forward. Yep, that is basically the movement. So as long as you press W, A, or D, it will go forward. Sorry, just W, sorry. If you go press W, it will keep you going forward. While in the turn method, if you press A or W, it will tilt the player's ship left or right, depending which way you go. So A and D. And it will apply torque to the rigid body for realistic turning. And then we also have the display speed, which is here essentially. So if I was to move, it keeps it up to 140, or I think it was 120, without boost, and then with boost it's it's 120 without boost, and it's 70-ish, around 70 to 90 without boost. So the script that works, this is the boosting system. So the boosting system is just a simple, if you're pressing Q, speed up by 0.5, and it also will change the color of the particle systems to blue or red. And then when you press Q, for example, let me actually get the player up and I can show you on the inspector. So you can see it's counting down, or yeah, counting up, sorry, not down. Yep, so yeah, so once we press Q, you will see it turn to 0 and then slowly count up, as long as the player is not, essentially as long as the player doesn't press the button again. I can spam the button and it will essentially not allow it to work. So one thing I would like to highlight, when creating the roads, I used an asset called Easy Roads 3D. It is a very powerful tool that they sell on the Unity store. So to create roads, essentially they use splines and connect them all up. That's like the simplest way to explain it. Yeah, so the way you essentially make them is you pick a road type, you add the new object, and then when press shift, it creates it, and then you can just essentially finish track. I'm very happy with this tool essentially. I just wanted to quickly showcase it because it's amazing. So that would be the final demonstration of everything in the game so far. Yes, that is essentially everything. Thanks so much for watching, and have a nice day. Bye.